right, Marnie Glickman, Tuesday night, second to last KHOP88 of 2020. Marnie Glickman joining. I'm, of course, Jason Joyce from Madison, Wisconsin. I never introduced myself. I realized that. She is Marnie Glickman from Northern California. And joining us from New England, specifically, well, is it Boston? Boston city limits?
No, we're in Bedford, which is about 15 miles outside of Boston.
Gotcha. Is Eric Haugen, of course. Eric, thanks for joining us. Great to see you.
Jason, it's great to be here. You know, and with Christmas 3 days away, typically at this time of year, I would be heading back to Minnesota.
Yes.
But with the pandemic, we are staying put. So, you know, being able to connect with you guys and the broader Hopkins community like this is the next best thing. It's a great treat. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. It is sort of true that we've touched on that in a few other shows that, like, you know, people go back home and then they gather with maybe a couple of their friends, maybe some people gather for a beer someplace. And there's so many times when I sneak in and out of Minnesota without calling or talking to anybody. And now I'm just missing the opportunity to be able to go to Scoreboard and, you know, stand around and kind of watch the door out of the corner of your eye to see who's going to walk in next.
It's nice to know that place is still open.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
remember, T. Wright's closed years and years ago.
Right. Yeah, true. Yeah. That whole Lake Minnetonka scene is renamed.
So Eric, how often do you usually go back to Minnesota?
We try to get back twice a year, typically around Christmas. And then we'll try and make it back once during the summer, usually kind of late June. Once school here runs really late. I don't know what it's like in Minnesota these days or out in Cali, but the kids are usually wrapping up. Sometimes it's a couple of days before Father's Day. Some days it's even a couple of days after. So usually as soon as school's done, we'll head back and enjoy some of that, early summer, 9 o'clock, Minnesota sunsets. Those are always some of the best days of the year.
And who is the we?
I've been married for 14 years now. Jason was at my wedding, actually, to a beautiful woman named Nina. And we have an 11-year-old daughter, Karina, who is in 5th grade.
Let me just say that, because I don't know that we've talked much about your wedding, Eric, since I was there. Eric was married in an Indian wedding, and I don't know how many of the boxes of sort of a traditional Indian wedding were checked out of the available ones. I know that he did not enter at any point on a horse, which many of us were very disappointed about.
I have been to an Indian wedding, though, where the groom did come in on a horse in India. That was very cool. That's
fantastic. The food was fantastic. The dancing was sort of off the hook fantastic. So it was a great time. It was just a party. Like, I don't remember if it was a live band.
No, it was a DJ, but my, Nina has a couple of cousins that really get after it. Not in a hard partying, drunken way, but just, really outgoing and get people on the dance floor. It was a lot of fun. In fact, although it's funny because, I had to speak Sanskrit during the wedding, and I've been to weddings where it's, it's two Indian folks getting married, or sometimes it's, it might be a white guy marrying, one of Nina's cousins or something. I've never heard anyone else speak Sanskrit at a wedding. I don't know how I ended up having to do it. But yeah, it's just kind of funny. I mean, one of Nina's cousins got married a few years ago in New York, so we went down there for it. And I remember saying to him afterwards, I said, Angus, I don't know how you got away with that, but you were at our wedding and you saw what I did. But even Nina's brother didn't speak score. Nina's brother didn't even speak Sanskrit. He got married 2 or 3 years after us. But again, like you said, no one's keeping score.
But do people speak Sanskrit? I always thought of it as a written language.
I think it's more like it's chants. I mean, really, remember, Jason, the priest would say something, I'd say something. And, and it was a fusion ceremony because there were some Lutheran elements into it too. Yeah. So it was very cool. It was a great really day. Cool.
And it is that, and I don't know how often this takes place, but yeah, you really do have the sort of the Minnesota Haugen Lutheran Scandinavian contingent right in there with a a broad, you know, Indian family. I don't know where Nina's from, or did she grow up on the East Coast somewhere?
Yeah, she's from North Jersey originally.
Okay. So yeah, it was cool.
And so what's it like living on the East Coast?
I mean, you know, we enjoy it. I like it. You know, I think when I came out here to go to school, I kind of figured that there was a decent chance that I would end up here at least right out of college. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and I kind of, you know, honed in on sports media as, you know, something I wanted to do, hopefully with, you know, with my career. You know, when you think about it, the big networks and the league offices are all New York City. ESPN's up in Connecticut. You know, NFL Films is down in New Jersey. So, you know, I kind of, I guess, always in the back of my mind figured that I might, you know, once I was you know, had a family and was, you know, had some years in the industry, that I'd end up out here. But, you know, it's fun. I mean, like, even the town we live in we're right between Lexington and Concord, which, you know, for all you Revolutionary War buffs, where it was, you know, kind of the first two battles of the Revolutionary War. So there's just a ton of history. You know, there's like national parks and things like that. You know, obviously there's the Freedom Trail in Boston. You know, you can do, you know, my daughter's really into Harry Potter. So a couple of years ago, we took her down to New York City for a weekend to see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And that's not to say that Broadway shows don't come out to, you know, Minneapolis eventually, or Chicago. It's just, it feels a little closer here and a little easier to get back and forth.
We touched on your career in sports media there for a second. Just we're welcoming in our Facebook friends, and one of the first people to weigh in, of course, our old friend Heather Thorson. So Heather says, this is all very adult stuff, but all the years growing up, Eric was, quote, Howard Cosell for every outdoor and indoor neighborhood athletic event. Mm-hmm. And he was so good. So, and I of course remember the sports themed quiz bowl.
Oh yeah.
Pulled together for the original KHOP, which was quite a product. I mean, you had, I think you must have pulled together every question, and there were many, many questions.
I wrote all the questions. Andy Jarr, I think, did most of the production. If you remember, Andy, yes. I think he was a couple years behind us. But yeah, that was fun. That was at a point in my life when I wanted to be on air. You know, Chris Berman was like a Brown graduate, and, you know, and he was, you know, kind of building ESPN at that time. So that was, you know, something that, you know, I figured that would be something cool to, you know, kind of have to look back on. You know, ultimately, when I got to college, I kind of figured out I wanted to be a little more, you know, behind the screen and behind the scenes, and, you know, doing more production work as opposed to being the talent. But yeah, that was fun. That senior quiz bowl was a lot of fun.
But you were drawn to sports media. I mean, from early. I mean, I remember you introduced us to George Michael's Sports Machine. Like, you knew all this, the revolutionary stuff about sports media. You were right on that stuff.
But again,
was that what you wanted to do?
Too. Well, you know, when I went to Princeton, I actually thought I might end up, I was interested in working on Wall Street. Yeah. But then you know, I had done student, you know, I had a very mediocre athletic career in college, which, you know, we can get to if it makes sense. We don't have to. But I also did student radio, you know, covering, you know, doing some play-by-play and some color commentary. And there were guys there, you know, there was a guy, I remember when I was there, who was a senior, who had worked at, he had worked at ESPN. There was a guy 2 years ahead of me who ended up going to ESPN and ended up, you know, when I was I was a senior, I went up and like spent the night with him and actually hung out with him down in the, you know, in the highlight room, and kind of got a feel for the place. So
wait, what's a highlight room?
Highlight room is where and this is really getting inside baseball for TV, but basically it's a room with, think about a room with like 45 or 50 television sets. You know, each one brings in a different game, and you've got a recent college graduate kind of watching the game, writing down what happens. And then from, you know, that list of plays, they pick out 4 or 5 to build their highlight. They go and work with an editor to put it together, and then it ends up on SportsCenter. And that's a very 1990s model for it. It's right. Different now, certainly, but that's what it was like, you know, when I was cutting my teeth in the industry.
Thanks.
I do remember also being in your basement and taking turns calling, you know, fake play-by-play games. And I mean, I think a lot of us were just clowning around with it, but you were clearly took it sort of seriously. You were really trying to,
you know, I mean,
accomplish something there.
I mean, I think I've been lucky. this is, it's a tricky industry to break into, certainly. I mean, I think what really helped me was when I was at ESPN, I mean, the company just exploded. So there was a lot of opportunity. When I got there, every sports center was 30 minutes. There was one network. By the time I left 7 years later, I was a producer. And by that time, there was 3 networks. There was ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News. Every sports center was an hour. They expanded. Baseball Tonight was an hour. I helped take that show from 30 minutes to an hour. NFL Countdown was an hour. I mean, now it's 2 or 3 hours. Yeah. So, it was great. I mean, me and a lot of the gentlemen that I started with, we all kind of, kept getting opportunity. And as long as you didn't screw it up, you could move along pretty quickly there back then.
Well, let's talk about the sports career.
I mean, my athletic career?
Yeah, because you and I did not go to elementary school. So Eric and I met at West Junior High School. Yep. Marnie went to North, of course. We've talked about the epic 7th grade football year that we had.
I saw that on the Let's Say Chocolate Show. Yeah, that was good.
You, of course, were with me on the better of the 2 teams, the lightweights.
Yes.
I didn't know you very well, but you stiff-armed me once in practice, and that's something that you don't forget very often.
I don't remember that, but
I was like, first. So Eric you played running. You were one of the running. We had a 3 running back offense. I don't know which of those backs you played, halfback or tailback or what, but you were carrying. It was during practice. You were carrying the ball. I was probably playing linebacker or safety or something like that, and go in to tackle you. It's a scrimmage. I'm not playing nearly at the level of intensity that you're playing at, and which I think is true. You played pretty. I mean, that's why you were good at sports. You were pretty intense about it and serious about it. But yeah, stiff arm me, and I was like simultaneously like, I've never been stiff armed before, never been stiff armed like that before, and is that what we're doing here?
Wait a second. What is stiff arming? I'm missing it as someone who's never played
Please
football.
Explain, Eric.
Stiff arming is, in football, if you're running with the football, you're kind of cradling the football in your arm with one hand, and then with your other hand, you actually basically you just push out, so your arm's stiff, and you use it to push somebody away when they're trying to tackle you.
Okay. It's
actually also a metaphor. And I haven't heard this in years, partly because I'm not in the scene where I've got friends who are chasing women. But It was also used as, did you go up like in college? Hey, did you go up and try and talk to that woman? No, I tried, but I got stiff armed. She wanted nothing to do with me.
Right. Stiff arming is what the Heisman Trophy is.
Yeah, I got the Heisman. Yeah, exactly. Right. There you go.
But yeah, that's the thing. And while it's illegal for a defensive player to grab the face mask or really touch around the face of an offensive player, Eric put his hand right on my forehead, and he put his hand right on the camera. That's what it looked and felt like. I mean, I still remember it. I was like, damn, that was like, I liked playing football. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing defense. I liked tackling people. But I was like, that was, again, you get into that middle school age, 7th, 8th grade. Now you've got some guys are playing at a level a little bit higher than those of us who like to just goof around. And that was 7th grade. 7th grade was my last year playing football.
Yeah, we had a good team that year. We had a very good team.
It was great. It was, and we had so much fun. I heard that the subsequent coaches were not as fun. But that's what never drew me back to the sport.
Ron Wadeen in 8th grade. I think his goal was to run off as many promising athletes as he could. In fact, I remember my dad saying to me, like, who is this guy? He's got to make it fun. If you want good athletes to play and you're trying to groom kids, to play in the high school program sometime, you got to make it fun.
What did he do?
He was just a kind of a jerk.
Old I remember school, mean cuss. Yeah.
I don't know if he's still, if he's watching or if and frankly, there, some of those coaches are okay. I mean, Rogie Swenson's name has come up at least once on I think it was on the, I don't know, I can't remember whose show it was on, but maybe one of the hockey guys, and Rogie was as hard a coach as I've ever played for, but I loved playing for him in 8th and 9th grade. And, he was, I know you talk to people a lot about who was really influential. You ask about teachers, and I felt like all the teachers we had really kind of growing up, whether it was West, whether it was Hopkins High School, the teachers were all fantastic. For me though, Rogie was a guy who, you mentioned intensity, Jason. He was all about focus and, being prepared. And that was something that, I kind of took to heart and really put that into practice. And when I was I was kind of a below average hockey player, when I first started playing traveling hockey. And then I played for Rogie for 2 years in 8th and 9th grade. And, he helped get me to a point where, I was lucky enough to play half a season. I got called up to the varsity halfway through my sophomore year. I think the other thing that really helped me, and sorry to, kind of hijack and talk about hockey.
No, it's great.
But,
It's inevitable.
Well, again, it meant so much to me, and I think a lot of us in high school, that I think it's only natural that it gets brought up. But when you mentioned Burwell, Jason, I grew up living walking distance to Burwell, and then after 7th grade, we moved to a house that was 1 block from Glen Lake. That's the house that you guys have probably been to a few times. And there was an outdoor rink at Glen Lake. So, and that's that was a 5-minute walk. So I spent so much time down there when I was in 8th and 9th grade, because if you wanted to go down there for 45 minutes, you could. Just walk down, and and when Meadow Park, where Heather and people from our neighborhood skated, that was like a 20-minute walk. So it was just harder to get to. So between Rogie and just a lot of outdoor skating, that's what really kind of set me up, I think, to play in high school.
I want to talk about that because Glen Lake was, and I grew up walking to Gatewood, which Gatewood had 1 hockey rink, one like they would flood the
general skating,
T-ball field, Glen Lake, if I remember right, had like 3 boarded hockey rinks and general skating as well. Like it was a massive complex.
That was a nice setup.
But my sister and brother-in-law have kids. They live in Eden Prairie. Those kids play hockey. Those kids never skate outside. He's flooding their backyard this winter, and for those kids, it's a total novelty. And I think, particularly for kids who play the sport at the level you played at, the traveling, the A-level traveling bantams and peewees, those kids just never play outside anymore in Minnesota. Or if they do, it's just sort of a novelty. They'll play at the Braemar backyard or,
Well, isn't that part of that just due to global warming? Not to
maybe,
but I think it's harder to get ice.
And I think it's just their time as well. Like there's more rinks, indoor rinks that they can actually use.
But even, I used to come home, when I was in my 20s working at ESPN, I'd usually try and come home for Christmas every year. And most of those years there was ice, right? You could come home and you could, get a few good skates in at Glen Lake. And I feel like for the last, 5-10 years, it's you go by and it's dirt, or they've tried to flood it and they got a good sheet down and then it all melted. My brother Dane has built a backyard rink a few years ago in Roseville. He says he's going to do it again this year, but it's super fun to do. But like you said, it's there's a really great movie called Pond Hockey. I would suggest anyone who's at all interested in hockey should watch it. Actually, there's a guy from Edina that's kind of featured in it, a guy named Jeff Sorum, who's I think a number of years younger than us, but ended up playing at Yale. But yeah, it's a really well done movie, beautifully shot. I actually had it both when I was at the NHL. I put it on NHL Network, and then when I came up here, I put it on Nest. And it's just
cool.
It's that well done. It's just beautifully shot and really kind of evocative of what winter in Minnesota is all about, I guess.
Well, Patty Hegry has joined us on the show tonight, and she's been posting photos of her 2 sons because they've been doing a lot of outdoor pond hockey.
Good.
She sort of introduced them to pond hockey the other night. That was very cool to see. She also confirms that Ron Wedin was a bad softball coach as well. So
okay, good.
Equal opportunity offender there for sure. Do you coach? Does your daughter play any sports? And have you been drawn to coaching or being part of that parent?
She's not really a stick and ball kid at all. It's funny. The town we live in is a big karate town. There's like 3 dojos in town. So that was something that, we kind of tried to sprinkle in a few things for her. You know, she played soccer when she was in kindergarten, said she loved it. And then when first grade came around, she said, I don't want to do it. And, you know, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, we got her skating lessons. She was kind of into it, but, you know, got to a point where, you know, Karina, do you want to play hockey this year? She said no. And again, you know, that was in a weird way, it's almost a little bit of a relief because you see what an involvement, you know, how involved it is now. And you know, it was a big deal when we were kids, but I feel like it's even been, you know, the nice thing about playing hockey growing up in Minnesota was there was a lot of hockey. There was a lot of teams you could play within a 30 or 45-minute drive, right? Like maybe you drove, you know, what was a long road trip? You drive up to Osseo to play.
Yeah.
You know, whereas, you know, there's all this youth hockey in Boston, but you hear about these teams going up to Lake Placid, and then you go up to Lake Placid and end up playing 3 teams from Boston. It's just, you know, what's the point?
Right.
The other weird thing out here about youth hockey, and again, I keep coming back to hockey, sorry, is that you don't have to play for your town. You can play for any youth program you want. So but no, so Karina does karate. Like she just got her junior black belt back in November. So that was very cool. You know,
Does she compete?
No, she doesn't compete. It's just more, you know, kind of stuff she does in her own dojo, but no, she doesn't like fight kids from other, you know, it's not like Karate Kid, put it that way.
Well, I mean, those competitions can be very fierce as well. Maybe someday she'll do that.
Maybe. So no, I've never
That's
coached,
cool.
But that's, you know, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's coaching kids is fun, and you realize, like, I coached some of my kids' teams and realized that my role on those teams was less about teaching the skills and more about teaching kids how to play on a team and like organizing, like making sure the emails go out, making sure everybody knows where the game is, making sure that we have refs, you know, that kind of thing, which is it's a production. You realize too, looking back, that like these associations and organizations, and we, you know, you and I grew up playing, when we played football in elementary school, we had a team for our school.
Yeah.
There was a teacher who was in charge of that. And there was an athletic director at the district level who put together schedules. That's all been eliminated. All that stuff needs to be taken, you know, parents are taking control of that stuff. And
and you know, when parents take control, that's when it gets screwed up.
Yeah, politics and everything else.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question as a non-sporty person. What happened to sports in a pandemic, Eric? Like, what do you see? Like, how are sports changing?
Well, you know, I'm not sure that the sports themselves are necessarily going to change. I think the business certainly might change. I mean, you know, the entire sports world shut down basically from about March 13th through until I think it was baseball started playing again in late July, or maybe MLS was a little bit ahead of that, you know, pro soccer. But you know, it's more about, you know, I mean, there are you know, professional sports is a huge business, and there are some teams that are really hurting. I mean, I've heard that to open like an NHL facility, just to open the doors and stage a game costs like $250,000.
Whew.
And to do that without having people, you know, because the NHL is going to start playing in a couple of weeks without fans, to do that, you know, you're just flushing money. But, you know, I think everybody feels like they need to keep playing to keep the momentum up. You know, our industry is changing significantly due to the pandemic, I think for the better, because just, you know, we're trying to be a little more responsible with costs. And again, please, I don't want to get into that. Trust me, we'll bore everybody. But, you know, I think at some point we'll get back to, hopefully we're back to normal.
Yeah.
You know, but I think people may have realized, you know, I don't miss sports. You know, I don't need sports. You know, they went away and I didn't miss them that much. That's what I'm nervous about, as someone whose living is supported by people, you know, really caring a lot.
You didn't miss them? Why?
Oh,
well, the ratings are, I think what Eric's alluding to is that in some cases, the ratings for the NBA or some of the sports that came back, at least to some limited degree, did not, like, it's not like the ratings spiked and went right back to where they were.
Okay. People
did realize during that interim period where there weren't any sports, they figured out other things to do with their lives. And in some cases, I think this is the question we ask everybody on this show, and we might as well just ask it now. Have you picked anything up during the pandemic, like a hobby or something that you like to do that you weren't doing before?
Yeah, there's kind of a few things. I'm a member. There's a Lifetime Fitness, which Lifetime's a Minnesota company. Obviously, there's a Lifetime Fitness that opened up about 10 minutes from us, and it's gorgeous. It's great. So obviously they've been they were shut down. They're now open on a limited basis, but it's always hard to get over there for yoga. But I try and do yoga. It's probably once a week, and they have tutorials online, so you can just go in your basement and do it. I mentioned a lot of the history around Lexington and Concord. I've a lot of that is kind of based on bike trails. So I've gotten out and I did a lot of bike riding this summer. And cool. The next thing is going to sound really geeky. In fact, I think when Karina sees this, she'll be angry that I even told everybody. But there's also an Air Force base that is it's in Bedford. They don't fly military jets out of there though. But there is a civil airfield, and literally the airport's on. There's like a marsh outside my backyard, some trees, but the runway's probably 1,000 yards away. Oh. And there's spots on these trails you can hike in and get a really good view of the planes taking off and landing. To the point where you look at, they're like that big. You're really, really close, and it's almost humbling just to see how powerful these machines are. So I don't do it a ton, but maybe once every couple of weeks, I'll hike in or bike in, and there's like websites where you can kind of track. Oh yeah, there's a 747 coming in. That's going to be so cool to watch it land. Believe it or not, it's that kind of nerdy and that kind of geeky. And then you go do it, and there's like 5 people at like the viewing station. It's crazy, and they're all they're taking pictures. So that's I haven't been playing hockey since the pandemic hit, which I've missed a ton. And eventually I'll get back to that once the world's back to normal.
Yeah. That's cool though. I know those guys, there are always guys who are like my dad's age who, you're standing in the backyard and a plane goes over and they're like, oh, that's the Airbus A31. You're like, how do you know this? What?
Yeah, it's like this whole, I've only scratched the surface, but it's a whole subculture. You'll see people posting videos to YouTube and things like that. It's nuts.
Well, Eric, have you ever flown a plane? Do you want to fly someday?
No and no.
Okay. You're a ground guy.
No, I just, would it be interesting? Sure, but it's expensive and it's time consuming. And I just, I guess there's other hobbies I'd rather pursue that probably aren't as expensive or time consuming.
Speaking of that, I'm asking you a follow-up question. So have you read any interesting books lately in the pandemic that you want to share with me and the world?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the author. And believe it or not, I read this. It was part of a work assignment, because I think, as you're well aware, Boston has a very complicated history with race and with racism.
Yes.
The Red Sox were the last team to integrate in Major League Baseball. So we've kind of tried to step up our just awareness of what's going on. And, George Floyd was a big catalyst for that, which, kudos to our CEO for kind of making that decision. But I was assigned White Fragility, and I can't remember the name of the woman who wrote it, but I found it just incredibly eye-opening. It just, the book, for those of you who aren't familiar about it, it talks about why white people have such a difficult time talking about racism and addressing racism, and why it exists, and kind of the way that we label it in society. And it's bad, and racism's bad, and it is, but we all have these tendencies, and people get so defensive that you can't ever really grow because so it was just, I would recommend it to anybody. I felt like it was incredibly eye-opening, really enlightening, and really made me want to dive in further on the subject.
Well, the author is Robin DiAngelo.
Yes, that's it.
And I agree. It's an incredible book. It has really influenced my life too.
Yeah, the next one for me is How to Be an Anti-Racist by, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I have that. I just haven't had a chance to read it yet. Well,
his name is Ibram Kendi, and it is a great compliment to White Fragility. And it's interesting because it talks about racism, but also it's an autobiography of what it was like to be a Black academic, struggling with stage 4 cancer and surviving it at the same time.
Oh, wow.
It's a great book. It's as good as White Fragility.
Okay. I'm looking forward to reading it.
2 excellent recommendations there. We're just gonna weigh in with our friend Chuck Giostra here. Charlie has joined, and we spoke a little before we went on the air about the topics we were going to pursue tonight. And Eric wanted to make sure we brought up nicknames. Of course, Chuck has one of the great ones from high school, Crime Boss. Before we get into it specifically, I think it is pretty interesting. And we talked about how we've been, talking to guys on the hockey team. There's cliche about how hockey nicknames come. Do you want to explain a little bit about how hockey nicknames generally come up? And then we were always trying to top each other on coming up with nicknames for each other. So, yeah, what do you remember about it?
It's just that? Like it's E, or it's like Haugen, or Patrice Bergeron, who plays for the Bruins, is Bergie, or like Patty Haggerty would be Heggs or Heggsy.
Marty would be Glicks.
Yeah, it's just very, very, and for a sport that for a long time was kind of dominated by humble Canadian prairie boys, it kind of fits. Yeah. Now again, and hockey's another sport. I think that's like everybody's kind of having a reckoning with how inclusive is it. But yeah, hockey nicknames are the most boring, most generic nicknames I've ever seen.
But so among our group of friends, we came up with nicknames for everybody. Everybody had to have a nickname. We didn't even get into this with Doug, but we're going to have to revisit this next time we talk to him. Doug Robertson, of course, we should call him a co-producer of the show at this point.
He's a special correspondent. Yes.
Okay.
He's our first. Eric has volunteered to be our second special correspondent.
What Pale Glider? Pale glider for Doug? Yeah.
Pale Glider. Because of his pale complexion.
Yeah, you were you were cornbread, Jason.
Right. For no good reason other than it seemed appropriate.
Mike Case was Il Duce. Right. The nickname he gave himself, and somehow it stuck. So Mike Lesage was Squid.
And many derivatives of that.
Sandom was the albatross, right?
Albatross.
And of course, Duke.
Tross. Albie, yeah. For
me, in fact, it's funny. I explained when I started, work out of college. Somehow one of the guys I was working with, who's still a friend of mine, we got to talking about nicknames, and he said, I told him my nickname in high school was Duke, and he said, well, how did you get that nickname? So I kind of explained the story,
right? And
he just started laughing at me, and he said, I said, Mike, what's so funny? He said, so your nickname was, who? And I said, no, it wasn't like that. I said, it was great because like I do something good, like in a hockey or football game, and everyone would go Duke, or like you'd step on the ice on like in an away hockey game, and people would start booing us, and I kind of felt like, I was still getting, some energy from that, and he just kind of looked. He was just like, whatever, dude. It's good for you, but I can't believe that you didn't fight that nickname tooth and nail.
To be fair, so this is the story as I remember it. Please.
Oh God, we got to tell the story.
Yes, yes.
We would eat lunch in the cafeteria. At some point, Eric would excuse himself, stand up, and say, "I'm going to go take a Duke."
No, I didn't. No, I would. No, Dave Book. I think Dave Book was the one who dubbed me Duke.
Right, but I think we called you that because you used that term.
Of course, no, that's why. But I don't think
I'm going to go take a Duke.
Okay, and then I remember one morning. I think you guys may have both been at the table. We got to school before classes started. We'd hang out in the lunchroom. I remember walking in, sitting down, and Dave Book just said, "What's up, Duke?" And it stuck.
Right.
And again, I didn't mind it. I thought it was fun. And
I am just remembering that you and I traveled to school. I've totally forgotten this, but you and I traveled to school together many days. Sandom, and we're gonna have to get Sandom on the show.
Oh, yes.
B, we're gonna have to talk to him about it. Sandom's dad was a mechanic, and he worked on Volkswagens, and he repaired and gave Sandom this Volkswagen Rabbit.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Sandom would drive over to my house. It's often with his younger brother Rob. Would drive over to my house, pick me up. I would cram myself into the back of this Rabbit. Then we would stop and pick up Eric at his house. And all I remember from riding in that car is when it was bitter cold and that heat was chugging to keep up. And the 4 adolescent men in that car fogging up the windows. But yeah, I had totally forgotten about that until just now, that Sandham was our chauffeur to get to school many days. Any other nicknames you want to call attention to?
Well, remember, Charlie was Crime Boss.
Right.
And then, Adam Samaha, another, guest on the show. Adam, somehow, I don't know if he had family who were British or from England, but wasn't Adam Lime Boss?
Yes.
Because limeys.
I forgot that.
Right? Todd Dvorak.
I believe it was only because he was maybe born in England. Like he didn't.
Okay.
He's not
that's
English,
fine, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Wasn't Bill Hobbs was Lightning? I think, right? Bob
Yes.
Gollan was Pig or Billy Pig.
Right.
Who else?
Hobbs. I forgot about Lightning Hobbs.
I don't know. That's just it. But I just felt like our class had this kind of. Matt Hockett had a bunch of names. I remember Reggie. Right. Although none of Hockett's really stuck. Reggie.
Right.
One in the wallet. I remember we called them for a while. And some of these I think we only wrote down. I don't know if they ever really were even uttered, but
right.
Like the White Knight of Sophomore Delight or something like that. It was we had a lot of fun. Remember we used to sit in AP. Didn't we used to sit in Ken Wedding's AP government class and just
poli-sci or government,
pass stuff around like nicknames for X. Yeah, that was
right. Oh, that's right. A lot of list compilation took place. In that class.
Yeah.
That's how the Todd Ames Blues Band came to be. We basically just invented it.
In the Hammer. Class. Todd Ames, the Hammer. There you go.
See what you're
coming on the show. 2020.
Have you made contact?
No, it's Eric Rarup's responsibility.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
So, Eric Haugen, is there a teacher that you recall that has influence on you still from high school or elementary school or junior high?
I know that you've asked this question to other people, so I did think about it a little bit. I had in junior year, I had and I can't remember what comp class I took, but the writing class I took was taught by a student teacher from the U. His name was Harm Weber. And I remember his thing was, he was very big on, I want to hear your voice. Like I remember I had handed in a rough draft of a paper to him and he said, Eric, this is so just blah. I have no idea that you wrote this. And so, he was very encouraging, to think about when you're writing, try and find your voice when it's appropriate. If you're writing an analysis of Moby Dick, that's different. But if you're writing something that's personal, put your voice into it, put your perspective into it. And I felt like that was incredibly helpful.
Student teachers. Yeah, we have not, that's the first student teacher we've come up with, but I don't remember any specifically, but yeah, student teachers were a total thing in high school, and some of them were really pretty good. Do you remember student teachers, Marnie? No. Yeah, I can remember them vaguely, but that's good to know that one had that much
Here's a sports question. Who started the great tennis ball fight, Eric?
Ooh, wasn't that asked already?
No one knows. It's a mystery.
Source.
I'm getting ready for 2021. And we still don't have a lead on who to interview for the great mystery of who started the great tennis ball fight. And Ramon knows, but he can't tell us.
But we were sophomores. I don't think that would have been a sophomore. That would have been some rowdy senior, wouldn't it have been? Right? Wasn't that our sophomore year when that happened in the sit-in, which is the opening graphic of the show.
Okay, sport people. So the Hutton boys are sport people, right?
Yeah.
So the coach, right? Coach Hutton was the tennis coach?
And basketball, yeah. Mr. Hutton, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it was a tennis player who started it. You don't have any theories?
I don't know.
Somebody needed to have access to a lot of tennis balls. And
yes, a tennis player.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll work on it in 2021.
So this question sort of ties together both high school culture and sports in that we had talked earlier about going to the infamous Armstrong volleyball game, you know, and how the football guys were there and got all riled up. You played hockey, obviously, and you played hockey starting as a sophomore. So you weren't the experience of going to a Hopkins hockey game at Minnetonka Ice Arena and attending as a fan. That's a high school experience that's completely foreign to you. Right.
I played JV the first kind of half of the year.
Okay.
So, you wouldn't see the whole game, right? Because you'd play your JV game, you'd hop on the bus, you'd go back to school, you'd shower, and you'd come back. But yeah, wow. I remember watching them. I remember Dvorak had 2 goals against Park Center in like the first period, and I was really hoping he got a hat trick. And so I know I don't remember a lot of it, but I remember I probably went to 7-8 games that probably because I can't remember road games if we stayed and watched or if we came back. Honestly, I can't remember that, but certainly for home games you'd always kind of bop back to MIA and and watch.
Barney, did you ever attend any hockey games at Minnetonka Ice Arena?
Well, that's a funny question. The only hockey games I remember playing is when I have this big memory of going to a hockey game because Patty was going to be dressed up as a boy. Did this ever happen? That Patty was going to play? Did Patty ever play on our team?
No.
I mean, Patty
can correct the
girls
record.
Hockey player.
She played on her own team.
But I thought there was one game where Patty suited up and went on ice with all of you.
I don't remember that, but
we'll see. That's my only hockey memory of being there to see Patty suited up in a Royals uniform on ice.
Okay. Well, it's just it's and we're going to bring this up with the guys on the hockey team when we have them on, because I think it's for me anyway, going to a Hopkins High School hockey game was just sort of a part of the cultural, like, it's Saturday. What games were on Fridays and Saturday nights, right?
Well, typically Thursday, Saturday.
Thursday, Saturday.
Yeah.
So on Saturday night, it was like at a certain point, you'd be like, what's going on tonight? Like, and I think I've said this on the show before too, like there were a lot of times when I would just look, senior year when you're a sophomore and a junior, you're like, who's doing what? Where's everybody going to be? I need to be with people. But by senior year, I was like, I'm just going to the hockey game, and I would just go by myself, and you'd just run into people there. And then we would decide what we were going to do after that. But that was we just stand in the stands, and I mean, we were into the game, but we were just as into just standing and socializing the whole time. And it's just that whole scene of standing in those MIA stands and, the social networking, no cell phones, no actual, digital social networks, but that were going on. And, somebody shows up, some guy shows up that, but he's with a girl. Like, what's that about? What's going on there? Who's this? And it struck me that those kinds of things happened at hockey games in our high school, as opposed to, basketball and football was a whole thing.
But in the stands as a okay, we're gonna have a dance line show, ladies.
Yeah,
in 2021. But I think that happened at other sports things. But I'm not the one to ask about sports.
Yeah. One of the things that I miss now during the pandemic, one of the things that I really love to do in our neighborhood, I live just a few blocks away from a high school, is to go see basketball, because high school basketball around here is intense and completely crazy. And they're obviously not playing right now. It's really bumming me out. But on the blackest, darkest, coldest winter nights, to walk into a brightly lit high school gym is just like the best thing ever.
I can't believe you're here, Eric. So I'm just want to express my gratitude again, because you're not on Facebook, and that's so cool. What else do you want to talk about, Eric?
Oh gosh.
It's such a treat to have you here. What's been going on for the past 30 plus years?
Well, that's
I know it's a crappy question.
How much time do you have?
We have lots of time for you.
Well, what we glossed over completely is you went to business. You worked for ESPN.
Okay.
And then you went to business school.
Mm-hmm.
And you I mean, you were in Lower Manhattan on, I remember this vividly now. You were in Lower Manhattan on 9/11.
Oh yeah.
I remember when you went to work, and I forget which firm you went to work for out of business.
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan.
No. Was it?
I remember it occurring to me on the morning of 9/11 that you might have been in Lower Manhattan. Have I ever told you this story? I may have.
I honestly can't remember.
I was worried for your safety, and I was like, okay, the last place I want to call is your house in Minnetonka and get your mom on the phone and say, have you heard from Eric yet? So I called your brother Leaf, who was, I believe, quite literally in a fire watching tower in Montana.
Yeah, he would have.
So like, you call a guy in a fire watching tower in Montana to find out how another guy is doing in New York, and they're like, he's fine, it was checked in, everything's good. But
yeah, I mean, I was inside pretty much the whole time. You know, it was funny because I had just started at JP Morgan like a month. You know, I think I'd been there a month, and I was taking a prep class for a licensing exam. So you know, this classroom was not in our main building. So I remember walking a little further south, and because the JP Morgan office was on Wall Street, I remember walking further south in Manhattan and kind of looking up and seeing the big hole in the first tower and thinking, man, that, you know, that some amateur pilot really didn't know what they were doing, right? And we just kind of kept walking, and, you know, we sat down in class, and it was funny because a lot of people, I've never been a big rubbernecker. You know, I'm always uncomfortable watching, like, even like a show like The Office. I can't watch The Office because it's just so uncomfortable. And I know that's part of the humor of the show, but I just can't get into it. But so, you know, I was kind of sitting there facing the front of the class, just kind of waiting for class to start. Meanwhile, everyone else was, you know, this classroom had big windows.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden you heard the explosion for the second one. And I mean, people just went crazy. Yeah. I remember one guy was like, man, that was like a movie. So, you know, they ended the class, they sent everybody back to where they needed to go. We went back to our office. Again, I felt very safe. We were indoors. You know, but when the first tower came down, and this happened the second time too, but you know, the first tower, it was just like, oh my God. But you know, you kind of heard the rumbling, and we were probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 blocks away. I mean, I've never really measured it, but you know, you could kind of hear the rumbling, right? And it just got louder and louder and louder. And there was so much dust and debris that was, you know, kind of just shooting all over the Lower Manhattan. We were on a low floor. It was like the 2nd or 3rd floor, and it became pitch dark. Wow. And, you know, yeah, and it was just, you know, and eventually, you know, because that was a beautiful day in New York. It was gorgeous. It had poured the night before, I remember, and it was just such a beautiful fall day. So yeah, so we were inside, and then, you know, at one point, you know, some people are trying to make it home, like get to Jersey on a ferry or something like that. And I said, you know, I'm going to stick around here until they tell me I got to leave. So at about 1 o'clock, I think, you know, the head of the desk came over and said, you know, they want everybody to evacuate Lower Manhattan. So, you know, a couple of the new guys and we walked home. I was living on 38th, so it wasn't a huge walk. You know, we stopped off and, you know, kind of had a beer and watched the coverage at a bar in Greenwich Village. Ooh. But yeah, it was, you know, and it's funny too, because at the time, you know, it's like I get much more emotional thinking about it now than I did back then. Because and I don't know if it was because you're too close to it, or you know, maybe you know, you're just a little bit in shock. I mean, there was a guy that worked on our desk who had a brother that worked at Cantor Fitzgerald, you know, which was on the top floor. So yeah. I mean, I remember him saying, yeah, I got a brother that's up there. I'm a little, you know, like, I think he just knew that, you know, I think he had a pretty good idea he was gone. So yeah, that was you know, that was a pretty heavy time to be in New York. I'll actually tell you another story that sort of, and partly only because when I told Dane, when this happened, Dane, my youngest brother, said, Eric, like these big, like, you know, significant, dangerous events, you're like not that far away. But, you know, when the Boston Marathon bombing happened back in 2013, you know, I was at work, so that I was in no way in any danger. But that week I happened to be, the gentleman who ran our nightly news show was on vacation. So I was filling in for him, you know, kind of overseeing the show. And, we had the other manager who was there with me had said, hey, I heard a cop got shot over at MIT. And, I heard that, there was a carjacking over Memorial Boulevard. We should let everybody know that, just what's going on. So, our show ends, we get done, we tape the stuff for the morning. We kind of pull everyone into the newsroom. We start saying, okay, there's been a couple incidents. We want everybody to know it might be connected to the bombing, because the bombers were still loose at that point.
Yeah.
And literally, as we're saying this, because they had these big like pressure cooker bombs that they had, home cooked in their basement. We heard one of those go off because they had shot the cop in Cambridge and fled to Watertown, which is where our office was, which was right next to Watertown. So that whole shootout with the cops took place like 2 blocks from our office.
Wow.
So yeah, so like we had kind of heard the bombs go off, and we immediately said, okay, everybody get into an interior room. Let's shut all the, we got to turn off all the lights. We got to shut all the drapes. We don't want anyone to know we're here, because we figured, if these idiots like wanted to broadcast to New England, they could shoot, they could shoot their way into the building, put a gun to someone's head and said, we want to be on TV. And, what are we going to do? So we ended up spending the night there.
Oh my gosh.
Kind of on lockdown. And then finally, the cops kind of showed up at, 10 o'clock and said, all right, you guys can go. But literally they walked every one of us out to our car, said, okay, pop your trunk, made sure, looked under the car, made sure no one was under there, under the car, popped the trunk and kind of, sent you home. And then I think they found the guys later that night. So yeah, it was, like I said, I still felt pretty safe there. We were inside, but I think just given the uncertainty of the situation, that one was, and also just trying to, as one of the leaders in the group, just kind of trying to calm everybody down, right?
Yeah.
Because there were some people who were really freaking out.
Wow, I didn't know that story.
So that's my second disaster story.
Yeah. Stay away from Eric. He's going to be in the middle of it at some point.
But it's funny because you mentioned JP Morgan.
Yeah.
I believe I ran into Amber Sen on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. I was, as part of my training, I was, kind of doing a stint down there as a floor clerk, which I really enjoyed. And Amber worked for Dane Rauscher in Minneapolis for a while, and I think did very well. And I can't remember exactly why she was down there. She was meeting with like literally the broker whose booth was right next to ours. So it was the damnedest thing.
Did you recognize her right away?
Of course I recognized her. I had actually seen her. No, I hadn't. I saw her a few years after that in Soho. I remember Nina and I were just out Christmas shopping when we were dating, and I ran into Amber and her mom. But yeah, we totally recognized each other.
And
you brought this. Yeah, you brought up this that you've had weird run-ins with Hopkins High people, and
I got two more. I got 2 more for you.
Good.
And again, when you live out here, it's just not as common, right?
Yeah.
So this was from college. I think it was sophomore year. We were having like kind of like a hall party where I think there was at least a couple different rooms in our dorm that we're having that we're throwing the party. So I'm in one of the rooms, and someone walks up to me and says, "Hey, Eric, there's a woman in this next room who says she knows you." So I said, "Okay." So I walk over, and it's Jenny Lind, another former guest on your show.
Yeah, right.
I think she was in town for a conference because she went to Wellesley, I believe.
Okay.
And I think she was in town for I don't think it was debate. I can't remember exactly what it was. So we got caught up, and it was great to see her. Although it was kind of funny, she was getting her flirt on pretty good with a guy. So I was like, okay, I got to get out of here because I don't want to. I don't know if he was vibing her or she was vibing him, but I said I want to let this happen. I don't want to be in the middle of this. So I walked away. And then the third one was, and I've seen some of Sam and Jim's episode, but I don't know if you talked to Sam at all about his. Sam did work in sports television for a while before he
and radio. Yeah,
went to law school. So I don't know when this was. I had been at ESPN for a while, maybe it was 97, 98. And I bumped into Sam in the lobby of ESPN. He was out there. I think he was going to do some freelance work on the Little League World Series or something like that. So he was in
fantastic
meetings. But yeah, so it's you think small world, and there's not a lot of us out here, but you still manage to see him every now and again.
That's right. Yeah, that's funny. There's a couple of Hopkins High School grads here in Madison. Well, there's more than a couple that I never run into, but there's Hopkins people at all levels. Like, I mean, in many classes that are super far separated from us. Those are the people I run into. Like people who it just comes up like, I'm from the Twin Cities. Oh, I am too. Where did you go to high school? Hopkins. Seriously? Like what year did you graduate? No, 98, or 78, it's pretty remarkable.
One of the guests I want to have on in 2021 is Tony Cobb.
Yeah.
Who lives near me. And I have not seen him, even though he lives so close, but I talked to him on the phone. He said he'd come on the show. He's like, yeah, I was at a funeral for one of my clients and they were talking about some woman named Marnie Glickman at this funeral. They're like, oh, not her. And he's like, I know her.
Was that your school board controversy?
Yes, it was a school board racial justice drama at a funeral. And Tony came to my defense 30 years later.
We knew he would. That doesn't surprise me.
We knew he would, but he's coming on in 2021.
He'll be a great guest.
It's going to be great. Marnie, do you want to tell us who we have in store here? Who's on the schedule?
You have to give me a second.
This is a KHOP88 tradition, Eric.
Yes.
Every week I ask Marnie who's going to be on the show, and she has to pull it up. As a television producer, you'll appreciate the need to have these memes.
Although I do much more. I'm much more involved on the business side these days,
right.
Which is good because when you're on the business side, you don't need to be there at 11 at night.
Okay, well, I am so excited that Eric has agreed to be our second special correspondent.
Did I really agree to that in the pre-show meeting?
Agreed. We have two special correspondents, Douglas Robertson and Eric Haugen. Okay, I'm ready. December 29th, next Tuesday, Lisa Steppe, Casey Lunetta, and Jennifer
Morasic.
January 5th, Troy Finn. January 12th, Deborah Oleski-Brill, Julie Hebner, awesome. January 19th, Denise Peterson, Klosterman, Joy Geislinger, and Stacey Semler. January 26th, just confirmed from Golden Valley, Eric, Tanya Peterson and Mary Leighton. February 2nd, the first hockey show.
We've got, I don't know where the confirmations are, but I've heard a lot of this. I've heard Rick Eberhardt, Andy Puchner, Tony Ceruno, Doug Robertson, I think is going to be with us.
Rick Marker.
Talking to Eric. And there's been a lot of talk about tracking down Jason Crow, who apparently has a newly minted Facebook page.
Yes.
So
can I tell? And I know we're up against the clock here.
Oh,
but
no, we're at your service, man. We knew it would be.
Can I tell you a funny Doug Robertson story?
Please, yes.
Hockey.
Yes.
So, and although it does involve me, it might be as much about me, it's hockey, so whatever. This Doug's junior year, he broke his collarbone. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Now I remember that. Yeah.
He got hit from behind by a player from Edina, a guy named John McCoy, and. So I remember, senior year, the first time we played Edina, and I could be wrong on this, but for some reason I seem to remember that, Doug was a little frustrated because he wasn't in the lineup, or, he was dressed, but he just wasn't getting a lot of ice time. And I knew he really wanted to play against Edina because he was really jacked up to, because of what had happened the year before. So, at one point in the game, I caught John McCoy with a really good hit. It was really, loud and knocked him over. The crowd went nuts. Duke, and that game was on KHOP.
Oh,
so you can see on the KHOP feed the way the camera was shot. You can see Doug stand up on the bench and pump his fist, and I swear he jumped, and it was almost like his feet almost were higher than the boards.
Oh,
because he had said to me after the game, he said, hey, you really got John McCoy there. And I was like, yeah, that was a good one. And it was always great to get a big hit on somebody, but that one was absolutely one of my favorites just because I knew what it meant to Doug.
That's
so
fantastic.
Are you free on February 2nd, Eric?
What's that?
Are you free on February 2nd for the hockey show?
Is it a Tuesday?
Yeah.
It's a Tuesday night.
I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Okay, put it down. February 9th, Mel Jacobson has booked himself again. He's coming back.
Does he keep getting bumped, or does he keep bumping himself?
It's DSL problems, internet issues.
He's on a DSL. He's upgrading his internet connection.
To come on the show. I also have a yes from Jennifer Goforth.
Fantastic.
Determined. And I'm so grateful that you are here, Eric. It's so nice to just be with you for an hour.
Question for you guys.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sure.
What is there one moment in your life that you wish you had a picture of that you don't? And if so, what is it? Or what's the one moment in your life you wish you had a photo of? The
joke of people our age, of course, is that our kids have pictures of everything. I mean, their phones are full of pictures of the ephemera that take place. And we joke like, thank God there wasn't a picture, or there wasn't a camp phone when I was doing this or that or whatever. That's a really good question, because we've seen some of the, like Patty has all these pictures of, you know, gatherings at her parents' cabin. Marnie just revealed this photo. She was looking for photos of you, Eric, and it's a photo of me sitting on a lounge chair on her deck talking to Chris Arney.
Looking lovingly at him.
Leslie Anderstrom.
You took Chris to prom.
We went to prom together.
There you go.
Yep. Leslie Anderstrom, Sarah Strandberger in the back. It's a great photo, and it's like, yeah, those are the things. Those, you know, when there were 12 people in the hot tub in Marnie's basement, you know, those kinds of things. That's what I think about, that kind of, you know, weekend fun at Marnie's house or wherever, at your house, all night card party at Eric's house or whatever.
You know, Eric, that's a good question. I am not really a camera person, so I don't have any quite desires of me in a photo.
Okay.
I mean, I have the best photo I found of you, Eric. I didn't put online yet, but I will email to you and maybe post in your show. Is a group of maybe like 18 of us friends, boys and girls in high school. But I didn't post it of you because, like I said, Mike Case jumped in front of your face. But us being exuberant teenagers in high school, full of zest and life.
Is that the Patty Hagery finger photo?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great one. Yeah.
I don't think Case really jumped in front of me. I just think I was kind of obscured a little bit. I don't think that was intentional by
I agree.
by Mike.
I take that back.
Yeah. For me,
what about you?
Eric? I have two. The first one is probably pretty obvious. When Karina was born, she was a C-section, and it happened at like 4 a.m. So when, you know, they took Nina away to sew her up, you know, they put Karina in the incubator. You know, you can stick, you know, and I'm sure this happens with most new parents. You put your hand in, you know, and your child grabs your pinky. And I think back then I had a flip phone. I hadn't yet upgraded. This was 2009. I hadn't yet upgraded to an iPhone, but it was more just, I think, you know, I was just so worn out. And so again, it was 4 a.m. I just frankly forgot to take it. And Eric, I wish I had that.
You know, I'm going to pause you there. It's so interesting. We're going personal now. I had my birth daughter at home, and they're like, do you want a photographer? I'm like, no fucking way. I don't want a photographer at me giving birth, but I kind of wish I did. Okay, what's the second one?
It's a work thing. So the first big event that I covered as a producer at ESPN, you know, when SportsCenter went on the road, was the 1997 World Series. And it may have been, to this day, the best week and a half of my professional life. I just felt like literally every single decision I made was the right one. And I remember kind of halfway through, I had a really good, you know, kind of post-game show the night before. And the gentleman who overseed all of our studio programming, you know, big shot at the company. And, you know, he had been in the truck, you know, the night before watching me do the show. And, you know, he kind of pulled me inside and said, hey, you know, I really thought you did a great job yesterday. You know, you really, you know, you really ran the truck well. You know, everybody knew what to do. You know, just, you know, keep it up. I was really impressed. So, I do my pre, there's another game that night, baseball, they play every night. So I do the pregame hit. I go up to the set and, where we do where the talent are, it's outside and there's 4 chairs. And one of them is the gentleman, is the big shot at ESPN who had been very complimentary of me. Another one was Chris Berman,
Who's Chris Berman?
He's a legendary ESPN. He built ESPN basically.
The number one guy there.
Yeah. And Peter Gammons, who, was a very well-respected baseball journalist. Some people call him the shadow commissioner. So there's like a 4th chair. And I said, you know what? I don't know who else is coming up here, but I'm going to go sit down. And it was just kind of this moment where I felt like, not that I necessarily made it, but I felt like, okay, I am making it. I am getting someplace in this, with my career and in this industry. So that's one. And again, it was just a moment in time. I mean, I left ESPN less than 2 years after that for, a couple of different reasons. Nothing bad. I just, wanted to kind of move on. But yeah, that was definitely a moment.
Thanks for sharing those.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, I mean, because you were the guy that we knew, see, so, consider, like, thinking about this question about.
By the way, are people still on? I mean, we're way over time now. Are people still?
People are still on. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But thinking about this, this is my flattery moment for you, Eric. Speaking of this idea of when you play on a hockey team, you don't know what it's like to go to a hockey game, but you're the guy that a bunch of us know who is. I know a guy who works at ESPN. Like you never told anybody while you were watching SportsCenter, at a bar or whatever. Like a buddy of mine from high school works for ESPN. It's pretty cool. And I remember because you would tell stories about how you were in a like a fantasy basketball league or something with Olbermann and Dan Patrick, who are the biggest celebrities in the world when you're 25 years old in 1995. Those guys are inventing sports television at the time. And like, yeah, I have a buddy of mine's, works at ESPN.
Well, I have a different female version of this. I am not surprised at all about all of your amazing successes.
Well, I mean, I'm barely middle management at my current job. Let's not act like I'm running the company or anything.
No, I'm not saying that.
No, I've been very. Thank you, Marnie, and thank you, Jason. I mean, I've been. I'm very grateful. Just the way that things have. Worked out. The one bummer about ESPN is, like, it's great. You go to cocktail parties, you meet guys, they all want to talk about it. You meet women. They wanted nothing to do with, oh, you work at ESPN? Oh, okay. And they're like looking over your shoulder. Now, and again, obviously I'm happily married now, so everything worked out. Yeah. But I just remember kind of giggling about that. Like, man, I just can't get any play with this.
Yeah,
ESPN
zero credibility with the ladies. Well, what do you guys think? I think we've achieved. We've gone over marker.
I wanted to do a longer show than marker. And I think based on what I've seen, because I haven't watched every show, and I have a good marker story, but I will tell it on the hockey show.
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
So
one's going to break all the records. I feel like it's going to be a free flow.
So before we wrap up, and I assume will we do a little post chat after? Or
yes,
okay.
Of course.
Yep.
Great. But I'm only because I've noticed this on the show. How did you choose the play out music for the YouTube shows? And I know that's the Suburbs, but what made you choose that particular song, Jason? I think it's great, but
not long before this show. Oh, so I listen to, during the day when I'm working, if I can listen to music, I listen to a radio station out of Seattle called KEXP, and it's sort of alternative rock music. And one day I'm working and I hear them play that song by the Suburbs, Spring Came, which I think is off the first Suburbs record. And I'm like, this is the Suburbs. What? Some Seattle DJ is playing the Suburbs on his show, like primetime morning drive in Seattle right now. This is insane. And so I went in and listened to it, and it's just a great song. It's got a cool, that outro of the song is such a great outro.
At the end, yeah, the sting. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I just, when you as a television producer, you'll have zero appreciation for my editing skills on this show, but I slapped the beginning card on in the intro, which trickles into our discussion, and then the outro at the end. But yeah, the Suburbs, of course, have a great place in all of our heart because they played.
You know, if you wanted to take it to the next level, the only thing I would suggest is letting the guest or guests pick their play in and play out music.
That's a good idea.
But then you're tracking it down every week, and
you got to get the MP3 in, right? Which, yeah.
But no, I think it's great. I think it's I think, to your point, it's just very evocative of that time in our lives.
Right. Yeah. We look forward, by the way, to hearing more stories about that homecoming, about the Suburbs, because I think there's a lot we missed out of that.
Oh, there's a lot we're missing. Well, I'm so glad you committed coming back with us on February 2nd for the hockey show #1.
That'll be fun. I haven't seen a lot of those guys in forever.
It's going to be great.
I'll be the woman in the corner.
Yes. Marnie, not to get too crazy, but I don't know if you celebrate Christmas in your house. Christmas is coming up this week. Merry Christmas. We'll stick here, the three of us, but Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays, everybody.
For the final show of 2020.
Good night.
All right, live stream stopped, recording stopped.